Music for All and presented by Yamaha. Welcome to today's Lunchtime Chat. On this episode, we discuss issues facing music educators and share practical ideas and solutions in preparation for the upcoming school year. And now, our host, Jerell Horton.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jerell Horton, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you guys today, this lunchtime chat that is sponsored by Music for All. When I was approached to do this, I got super excited because I wanted to say things like, how you doing, and have a conversation with good friends of mine. So I'm super excited that you're taking out of your busy day to listen to two of my really great friends who also just happen to be amazing educators. So I would like to welcome into this chat today Ms. Kim Shuttlesworth and Mr. David Aydelott. Hi, guys.
Hello, Jerell. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Awesome.
Hello.
I've been so excited to have this conversation. I know I keep telling you because I feel like every time I get to talk to either one of you, you fill me up in some way or you just help me to be a better person. So I thought of no better way than to share you with the rest of our band director family because I feel like you have so much to offer. Before we do that, though, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Let everybody know who you are. I know this chat's real informal. Sometimes people like to read their bios, but I would just like for you to tell us what you want us to know. And Kim, we'll let you go first. So ladies first.
Well, I am Kim Shuttlesworth. I'm the director of bands at Coppell High School in Coppell, Texas. And this is my 17th year starting teaching. I originally was a middle school teacher in Austin ISD for Clinton Small, and then moved over to James Bowie High School, was director of bands there for a little while. Then Leander Independent School District, starting a new school in Glenn. And now I've transitioned up to Coppell. So that's a little bit about me.
That's a mouthful. It's a lot. We're going to unpack it, though, so be prepared.
Okay.
David?
I'm David Aydelott. This is my 31st year in education. 29 as a high school band director and 2 years as a fine arts administrator. The longest stretch of my career was at Franklin High School, but now I'm really happy to be at Siegel High School in the middle of Tennessee in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Awesome. And like I said, you guys are my friends, so I'm going to throw you off the loop for a second before we get into our conversation. So, Kim, tell us what has been your favorite way to relax during the summer. What have you been doing to just relax?
Is that like a joke because you know that I haven't?
I'm going to force you to talk about it.
Well, I bought a house, and so my relaxation has been painting walls. Just like watching the paint dry on the wall. You get to think a lot and kind of hang out. But actually, lots of summer reading for me, and just sitting out on the porch. That's been really good for me. I haven't got to do that in a while, so it's nice to do that now.
That's awesome. But we've had conversations about your projects this summer.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting pretty handy.
You are getting handy. Every
I'm
time
learning
you send
about
me a
power
picture.
tools. Yeah. Power tools.
David, how have you been able to unwind this summer?
Kind of the same thing that Kim said. My wife and I, a couple of years ago, sort of took possession of an old farmhouse, about 130-year-old farmhouse, and the house I grew up in, actually. And so a lot of our time has been spent with power tools and redoing a bathroom and getting some floors sanded and things like that. And I like to be outside, so go for long walks and play with my dogs, talk to my kids, things like this. A lot of reading.
Both of you guys are just avid readers because a lot of the books that I have decided to read have been mentioned by either one of you. So I appreciate you guys for keeping me in the loop because I think you guys do a great job. And David, I think your farm is picturesque. Every time you send me pictures, I'm just like, that should be on a postcard.
Got to get you up there.
Yeah, I'll be excited to visit. Well, listen, friends, in this lunchtime chat, these two fine people who are just amazing people have both done something over this past year that I thought was pretty interesting and was good information to share with the band director community because both of you have transitioned into new positions in new communities. And I know that in our profession, it happens from time to time. And I just thought that through our conversations throughout the year, that I felt like both of you have handled your transitions like really well, and I thought this might be a good opportunity to share some information with our colleagues that might help them in their transition. Here we are we're at the beginning of a brand new school year, and I could think of no way better than to, for those of us that are remaining in the positions that we are, or those people that are transitioning into new positions, I thought we would both benefit from hearing about your experience and your leadership. So I guess my first question would be, what was your main goal? Like as you walked into your new position for the first time, what was the thing that was on your mind? What was your main goal? And either one of you could go. Whoever wants to go
I mean,
first.
for me, I would say just really starting to build relationships with parents, administrators, teachers, students. Just the trying to really establish uh, some close ties with folks that I was going to be in the building with, and get to know as much about the new community that I was a part of. Relationships for me have to be the first thing, because that sort of is what everything else builds on. So my first goal would have been that, Jerell.
Excellent. What about you, Kim?
Yeah, same thing. I think just joining in the community and entering it with your vulnerability of being able to understand what the community is, but then obviously you have your own way that you want to build those relationships, but you also need to know how those relationships in the community work as well. So I think just a lot of relationship building, and then just community involvement, visiting lots of different people, visiting different businesses, just getting to know where you work is really important too, and not just who you work for and things like that. So I would say that, and if the students, building those relationships with them was the number one thing that I think, um, like he said, that's what you have to do, the students and the parents and administration, for sure.
And in the introduction, both of you mentioned that you've been in several other places besides the place that you're working now. Did you find anything that was unique to the area that you are now that was maybe a little bit different than any other places that you've been before in building relationships?
I mean, for me, I've never worked in a place where it was just the one school system. I've worked in districts that have multiple schools, many middle schools, many high schools. And so there's a different dynamic to that when you come into a place where it is one high school, it is, a couple of middle schools that feed the one high school. So that was unique for me. And to kind of wrap my head around is that you didn't have to necessarily, you were learning what Coppell does, and not necessarily what this school within Coppell does, things like that.
Excellent. Do you feel like that fosters a different type of dynamic between you and the band director at that other school that was different than places you've been before?
Yeah, I think because you realize that your community is the community that's in your middle schools, it's in, your assistants and things like that. So your community gets smaller, but you can reach out. I mean, because we're in a large area here in DFW. So it was one of those like, okay, I know this is Coppell, but let me see what other people are doing, just because I was used to doing that. I was used to saying, okay, there's 5 or 6 other schools that I'm with. What is it that we want to accomplish as a district? And here it is. Here's the district. These are our goals. These are the band goals. These are things like that. How does that, work? That was just a little bit, it was fun, to kind of get in it, because you can almost create your own thing along with what their vision is.
Awesome. That's great. How about you, David? Did you find anything that was unique about this process of building relationships?
Well, it's funny because uh, Franklin was in Williamson County, which is borders the county that Siegel's in. And I've lived in the county that Siegel's in the entire time I was at Franklin. And so for me, in many ways, I was already pretty familiar with the area. The district leaders and the politicians and things like this were already sort of known to me. And so in many ways, it was like coming home in some ways. It's also the school I went to college in. So there was a lot of things that I already knew about before I got to Siegel. But then you learn the granular things that about specifically with the program and how things operate within the school building and that sort of thing. That that's those that are unique to every school. So it was a lot of familiarity for me.
That's excellent. Did any of you guys find anything shocking about your transition to your new place? I see both of you giggle.
I mean, those facilities were much different where I came. To see like Okay, I know we're Texas. Let's just preface with that. To see the big indoor facility, that I said, does the band get in? Oh yeah, the band's in here a lot. It was okay. To
David
see,
and I will chuckle about that.
I'm gonna take
right,
that.
to see an arena, like the facilities of the one school district, because you have all the land to do it. That's a
Yeah.
physical thing, I would think. But
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing I was shocked with. I was like, 23 practice rooms. What?
Oh my gosh.
What is that?
That's crazy. That's
That's
crazy.
not used for storage.
Because there are lots of things stored in practice rooms at my school. I can
Mhm.
tell you that right now.
Exactly.
Hmm. David, what about you? Anything shocking about your transition?
I don't think so. I mean, being next door to Siegel for a long time, again, I was pretty familiar with most things that were there. So it's been pretty familiar.
Awesome. Now, we are friends. I keep saying that because I want people to know this conversation to me is like we're just normal, like, having our conversation. But I happen to know that both of you are, pretty observant and you learn as much as you can from watching other people. So, as you are making this transition, have there been things that you've seen other people do in the past that you go, okay, that's a good idea, or maybe I shouldn't do this or that? Are there things that you're willing to share with our viewers that might help them as they kind of transition into their new places?
Yeah, I think, for me, being younger, I started out being a director of bands fairly young, I think. And Bruce, obviously, Bruce Dinkins was a huge influence in my life before he passed. And replacing him at Bowie, that was a unique situation because I already knew how things went. And so that just became normal. And then opening Glenn, um, it's almost like I could reference him a bit in certain things, like, oh, I can see why he did it that way. I can see that. And then I get to Coppell, and especially from like a literature standpoint and the magnitude of the program, that I really like go back to my file cabinet and think through some of those conversations that I had with him. I reach out to a lot of mentors that I have that are still here, obviously, and just, you know, remember when you said this to me is, now I see it. I think that's the reflection of being able to go back into the file cabinet and just pick up a piece of paper that you didn't think was going to be as useful is really useful now. So that's just kind of how my brain works. I'll get to a situation and I think, how would I handle this? And a lot of different mentors run through my mind, and I'm like, oh, well, I remember we did this back in blah. I can remember myself even saying in conversation, this one time, and you start to reference that, and it becomes a part of you in your journey of becoming the educator that you want to be.
Gosh, I hear you say a couple things. I hear you say sometimes a bit of information is not just for that time or season. Like, when you've been fortunate enough to be around people who, you consider to be great mentors, it's almost like you soak up as much as you can and save it. It may not be in context in that moment, but you can use it at some point in time later. I think that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. David, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but what I know from you is that you've been a really great mentor to some of the other directors in your area too. What are you carrying along with you? Because I know you've been influenced by really great teachers too. Like, what do you have to share?
I think, when you're in a transition, there's so much coming at you that's outside of your control, whether it's, it's oh, we don't do it this way, or this is how we load the bus, or just the little things like that, that sometimes those begin to pile up. And having conversations with folks like you, Jerell, or, other folks that I speak to regularly, just help to sort of clarify what's important. Because it's easy to get hung up in the noise of a transition and all the things that are happening. And what you really have to do is focus on what's most important. And so those kind of conversations with people that I really trust help bring clarity to my situation, because they're not in it. And so they're not suffering from from those sort of, the constant sort of conversations about things that are changing or whatever. We don't do it this way, that sort of thing. So just those conversations help bring a lot of clarity to whatever to the situation you're in.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because both of you, are so willing to reach out. And I think I spent a period of time in my career where, and just being transparent, I felt like, oh my gosh, if I tell anybody what's going on in my place, they may think badly about me, or they may, think that I don't really know what I'm doing. But I know that you guys both mentioned that you reach out to people like, other band directors and mentors and friends, because sometimes I don't think we do that clearly enough.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Kim pushes me a lot, because Kim will be like, send me a recording, come on, let's hear what's going on, and I think sometimes I still feel a little bit like, but I know that the people that I know in this profession who are doing really well are also people who are really willing to share. So I hear you guys both say that, so everybody can catch that encouragement during this time too. It's like, just don't be afraid to reach out to people and just ask questions and be transparent, because honestly, we're all trying to do the same thing. We could probably lift or release a little bit of stress if we're just able to reach out to other people and just talk about it from time to time. What do you say?
Well, I mean, Kim used the word vulnerability earlier. That's spot on. That's the magic word. And it takes a lot of bravery to be like that too. And this is something that we talk to with our kids too. It's, as a student leader, you're not expected to know all the answers all the time. You're expected to do your best and to ask for help when you need it. And so, I mean, there's mounds of literature about this. Can sort of go into different buckets, like the Carol Dweck mindset research and all that has to do with just being able to set aside your ego and not be afraid to ask for help. And it's counterintuitive, but it's really the pathway towards, personal growth. And so I would encourage any young director that's in a situation where they're like this, if Kim Shuttlesworth can ask for help, then all of us can ask for help. You know what I mean?
That is true, because these people are superheroes to me. So if a superhero can reach out and ask for help, surely us common folk can. We can do it. We can do it too.
I ask for help all the time. I'm like, I broke it. Someone help me fix it.
Yep.
But you know what? I think the thing too that I've been thinking a lot about lately, because I've seen it happening in my relationship with students, is the thing that I display is also what I expect from other people. So if I'm expecting for my students to be vulnerable, then that means that I have to be vulnerable. If I'm asking them to be artistic and sensitive, then I have to be artistic and sensitive. And then here's the big one. If I'm asking them to be accountable to the mistakes that they make, then I have to be accountable to the mistakes that I make. I make it much more comfortable in that space for them to, for it to be a symbiotic relationship if I'm able to be more vulnerable with them. And I think we should do that with our colleagues too. It's not always about who's better, but we can all get better if we just help each other. I think about that a lot.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is, what has been your major challenge, if you're willing to share with us? What has been the thing that has made you kind of sit in your bed like, oh my gosh, I can't get my brain to stop? If you're willing to share that with us, what has been your major challenge?
In our current job, or just in
Let's talk in the current job, since we're talking in terms of the transition. What has been your major challenge in this transition?
the long sigh. Sorry.
Let's unpack that.
I don't know about you, David, but so when I came in, my biggest role and my biggest thought was just observe for a year. Like, take it all in. Don't turn something too fast, right? And because it may not need turning. There just may be, WD-40 some squeaky things. There might be little things that you need to do. And I think one thing that I wouldn't necessarily say it was a struggle, but it's something I thought about a lot was, here, there's a lot of demand that they put on themselves, right? I don't necessarily have to apply the pressure. Sometimes you have to apply pressure to kids. I don't have to apply a ton of pressure to them. And so letting them, just teaching that you could be chill and still be really great and have a great time. Band is fun. It is fun, right? So trying to wrap my head around how to reach those students that may not realize that it's okay to have that way, and that you can just love band to love band. And, there's a lot that that we could unpack there. We'd probably need lunch and dinner. But, that's what I think about a lot in my community, is that they're so wonderful. Like, I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like, it's such a blessing to be where I am. But like, to let them realize that I am just as human as they are, and yes, I'm their teacher, but like you said, the vulnerability of making the mistake. Like the other day, I was like, I was today years old when I learned that blah, and they just start, they laugh at me. So letting them know that that's a safe place for them.
Yeah.
I think the struggle of that going through is just gaining that trust, because there's so many of them. There's so many students, and then letting that inch into the community, into the parents, into the administration, and then the school, not just the admin, just the teachers at the school. Just understanding that achievement and how we approach it can be positive and meaningful and fun. And it is okay if it's not exactly perfect. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm. That's great. David, I see you smiling because we've had conversations. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't mean to be a band nerd here, but honestly, just installing the fundamental program that I want the kids to use, I think is challenging. The pace that I'm going at this with the kids is different than what they're used to. I use the Richard Saucedo slower is faster mentality, and so that's been challenging to get them to understand that yes, we're going to work on concert F for a pretty significant period of time, but in the end, it's going to be faster. And so, just sort of casting that vision for basic approach to fundamental, and a fundamental approach to being in our band program. That's been the challenging thing, I think, is because it's just so different than what they're used to. What they were doing before is really good. It's a really good band at Siegel. This is the approach that I'm comfortable with. And so that's been probably the biggest challenge. And year 2 is already way easier than year 1 was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I heard you say something to Kim that reminds me of what a good friend of ours, Alfred Watkins, used to say. It takes 27 miles to turn a cruise ship. And in my conversations with both of you throughout the year, I could see how smart you guys are just being by taking it all in, like you said, Kim, and listening. And then David just realizing how to create the kind of rapport where you can get them to see that vision and move at that pace that is going to be beneficial for them in the future. I think both the things you just said are really awesome, and I think good information for any teacher, and not just any teacher that's in a transition. But I think the 2 things that you just mentioned are things that are good for a teacher that's been in the classroom 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Is just really being sensitive and aware of the people that you're teaching. Is that it's not always robotic, but there takes a lot of cooperation in order to make those things happen.
Yeah, also the teachers that you're working with, the people you're working with too. It's we did a book study with my team, the culture code, right? We did a book study together before we started, and it was, okay, what do we want our culture to be? This is our opportunity, right? This is your opportunity. We get a little bit of a fresh start. So this year, they don't know it yet. They might find out in this lunch, though. I may say, hey, you're going to get your reading assignment in this lunch. We're going to do, so Good to Great, right? It's a wonderful book. But have you guys done the little sectors that they send out? You can order like the social sector or the flywheel. So it's breaking down the book even more. We're just going to do the flywheel concept.
That's
really
awesome.
Easy read, really easy. It's like probably 20 pages, maybe. Let's talk about the flywheel.
I was looking back on my shelf because it might actually be on the shelf behind me.
Yeah,
that book is so great.
Yeah,
let's take a few minutes to talk about that too, because I think both of you are also in situations where you've come in and there have been people that were on the staff before you, so you also have to manage that relationship. Like, how has that been? Kim, you mentioned having the book study. I know that really helps when you get an opportunity to just have people digest information and share ideas. But let's dive into that just a little bit.
I also did a really scary Google Sheet questionnaire.
Oh,
I sent like a survey out. David, I don't know if you've done this before. I sent out a survey because obviously when you're coming into something new, you know nothing, right?
Yeah.
You know absolutely nothing. But if there's staff there, you're like, okay, what? So I don't bombard them and they think that I'm crazy. They probably think I'm crazy, but they don't think I'm crazy. I created a two questionnaires. I created one for them to tell me like what they thought the best thing about the program was, what the worst thing they thought the program was, what their favorite, like what's their favorite thing that they do, what do they think they're best at in their job, what do they think they need improvement on. And then I told them that there was a safe space for them to tell me whatever they needed me to tell me before I got there, so that I could maybe be aware, or that I could try to work on it over the summer. That was the first thing. And then we had one-on-ones based on their feedback that they gave me of how I could help them for the following year. And then from a question side, I just filled out like a huge Google sheet, and it had like 17 tabs or whatever, crazy stuff about basics. Like, how do you do your library? Like, who is in charge of insurance? How do you teach on the field? Like, I'm talking, it was broken down by marching band, concert band, inventory, uniforms, you name it. I had a tab for it, and it had 10 or 15 questions. And then anyone on the staff could come in and just answer them, so that when I got there, I wouldn't have to just bother them all the time. I could just reference to it. And if they wanted to change it, then we changed it.
Wow, that is next level.
I love a good spreadsheet now. That gets me excited now. I don't even need coffee anymore.
David, tell us about your transition in with your staff, like with
Well,
the
a lot of the
other.
I'm sorry, a lot of the staff was new for me. So it was, but the gentleman that I work with is Blake Ward. He's a really strong young teacher in our area. And so he had been at Siegel for a year before I got there. So that really helped me, just sort of, he could onboard me with a lot of the things that we were doing and the way we do things. But he and I did a book study as well. Actually, we opened it up to teachers in the district. It's on, and the book was a Rapport, which is, I can't remember the authors now that we're on the phone here, but it's a husband and wife, and it's incredible because it breaks down, actually gives tools for how to relate to people, and acronyms that can help you when you're in a conversation for how to respond to someone, how to really listen and reflect back, and that sort of thing. What you're really good at doing in this conversation today, Jerell, in fact. So that book was really good for he and I, because we could then employ it immediately. We could, we read it, and then a kid would come in and ask a question, and both of us would, one of us would answer and the other would critique them based on the book or whatever. So that really helped us sort of accelerate our relationship, and we're working on some other things for this year. So that really helped us, was just kind of give us a place to sort of start our relationship, our professional relationship from that place.
Wow, that's so awesome, because I can also hear that you're able to kind of model what we talked about earlier. Like, when you're building that rapport, you guys are doing that with each other in a strategic way, and you're able to help each other while you continue to build that rapport throughout the rest of the band. And that is phenomenal. See, this is why I talk to you guys.
That book in particular gives different animals and characteristics of animals based on situations. So it's mouse, lion, T-Rex, and I forget the other one now because I'm not looking at it. But the book's called Rapport, by the way. And so sometimes if there was a conversation where you, like for instance, mouse in the book, mouse. There's good mouse and bad mouse. Good mouse is that when you're in a conversation with somebody who might be upset. Good mouse is you sort of let them talk and you listen, and you're a little bit complicit with them and that sort of thing. And then you can maybe ask a few questions that turn it so that you're in a position where you can add value to the conversation based on your experience or what needs to be said. And so we would have conversations and we would begin to identify, I see what you were doing there with your good lion or whatever. And that was really nice for he and I. And he's a lot younger than me. And so it sort of, it gave us a place to, I think I already said this a minute ago, but it just gave us sort of a structure or a scaffold for how to build our relationship. So I would do that too. I love book studies, and I think it's a way just to sort of get people it sort of gets rid of the awkwardness at the beginning of a relationship, because you can focus on that, and that allows you to sort of begin to get to know each other based on what the book's about.
I think that kind of leads me to a kind of side question, because I think both of you are also very good at this too. Is that I think when all of us met each other, well, I know you guys are basically meeting for the first time today, but when we met each other, I noticed immediately that both of you have this ability to just see into people and just go, okay, I'm going to encourage you in this way. Because both of you guys have been able to encourage me in things that I didn't even think I was really that confident in. So how do you do that with a new team of people? Like how do you I call it like Lego pieces. Like that's basically how we talk about leadership in our organization is everybody's a Lego piece. Everybody has a particular skill, a unique thing that they bring to the table. We put those things together, we become better. Like tell us how you navigate that, especially when you're moving into, like Kim, you had a situation where that dynamic was pretty much established before you got there. But I'm sure now that you're there and you're managing this group, I know you figured some things out. So talk about that.
I'm pretty observant, I think. So
Uh-huh.
intentional observation a lot of the time is probably what it is. So when um, maybe they think that I'm not watching them, I know that sounds creepy. I should probably say that a different way. But anyhow, I just tried to pay attention to little things that they did. Even like, do they keep an organized desk? Like, do they appreciate that? So, because I don't keep an organized desk,
Me neither, girl.
but Riaz does, and so he has to come in and clean my desk for me. That's my shout to him. But anyhow, things like that are like if they enjoy a certain type of coffee, or if I notice that they like certain things, like I would bring lunch to everyone sometimes, like, hey, lunch is on me today. What does everyone want? So I would just learn about them that had nothing to do with the job. I think that's super important. Find out what
Me
they
too.
like that has nothing to do with what you're going to ask them to do or what they're capable of doing from a professional setting. And I learned a lot about them that way, like their favorite snacks, their, just little bitty things that make them tick. Do they talk about their family a lot? Do they have dogs? Do they like their dogs? Can they come and visit? Anything and everything you can do, I think is really important, and just kind of log it, just kind of log it down, and all of a sudden just be nice for someone.
David, I see you smiling because I'm listening to this information too. Like, that's good stuff. What are your thoughts?
I watch. I do those things too. I also watch their feedback with kids,
Oh,
and
Hmm.
that's good.
I don't sneak in around the corner or anything, but I do watch, and I try to watch for the little things, like how do you handle this student that's really struggling? Like what kind of feedback are you giving this student who's trying to get from here to here, who's really struggling, and how are you handling that? How are you handling that student's parent if there's a conversation there? Uh, those are windows into how we interact with students on a in the moment where when the students really need the best possible feedback and the best possible inspiration we can give them. I want to see how they're handling that, and then I can ask questions later, like, "Well, did you notice that you did this?" Or "What do you think about this? Would you say this again the same way? Do you feel like that was effective?" And so I like to ask questions that have to do with that, just sort of what their feedback is to students.
I think that's amazing because I mean it does speak a lot to them because they're going to interact with you in some way. I always like to think whenever I know someone well enough or if I have good enough rapport with the student, I can almost kind of guess what the interaction is going to be like, especially if we have to talk about something that's a little bit contentious, or even if we're just relating to one another. The other thing that came to mind as both of you guys were talking, is that we always have those people who say, oh, but this person is your favorite student or that person is your favorite student. And David, to use your word, I have come to understand it's not that I have favorite students, I have more rapport with. So if I stand at the door and I greet you every day, and you walk quickly past me with your eyes down to the ground and you say hello and you walk past me, we're probably not going to have as much rapport as somebody who will take a second to stop and say hello. We may say, oh, what do you do this weekend? Well, I watched this movie. Oh, I love that movie. And then we are like organically in conversation, and here we are building rapport. So I think that rapport like makes a huge difference. But I think I really appreciate the way both of you guys talk about getting to know someone outside of what their skill set is only in the job. Because I mean, let's be honest, we spend a lot of time with each other, so we might as well have real relationships outside of just what we do and work together. Which is another reason why I'm super blessed to know both of you guys, because I do benefit professionally from knowing you, but I benefit more personally because you guys are just two super fantastic human beings, and I appreciate that about you. I'm gonna build you up as many times as I get because it might be a couple days before we get to talk to each other again. Okay, I only have like two more questions and then we'll be done. But can I ask you guys, how have you been able to manage your personal professional goals as you have transitioned into a new community, a new school? Because I think that is something that every director has to take into consideration, and not just when you're transitioning into a new school, but I think it's always a good idea to kind of balance, what you think about yourself and the goals you have professionally in reference to where you are and who you're dealing with. Who would like to go first? That's a big one to unpack.
I mean, my transition to Siegel wasn't just schools. It was also career, because I was at Franklin for 12 years, and then I became the fine arts coordinator, or the fine arts director for that Williamson County School District for 2 years, and uh, that was that was great for me in a lot of ways, because I got to observe so many wonderful teachers, and just be able to walk into a classroom and see someone in an elementary music class that's conducting an incredible lesson, and there are so many things in the lesson that are implied that aren't said, but there's learning happen that comes through just the implication of the teacher's actions and questions and feedback in the material. And so just watching folks like that, and taking notes and that sort of thing, was great for me. And then as I realized towards the end of my second year that I probably was better suited to be a high school band director, uh, just being able to take that information along with all the years before teaching and then use that at Siegel has been a lot of fun. I feel like I'm back home, because I wasn't really cut out for administration. I'm probably too much of a in the moment control freak that, when I tell everybody is, when you're a high school band director, if you have an idea about something, something that may work, you can test it immediately, and by third period, if it works or not. But when you're an
Yeah,
administrator, you have an idea and you test it, and if it's going to pass committee 7 months later. So I
yeah.
just need the feedback loop to be a lot more quick for me. So using that experience going back into high school band was actually a lot of fun. And there are things that I began to appreciate about teaching that I before maybe didn't really appreciate as much, and not just in the sense of like being around the kids or whatever, but just um, how to manage stress and what's important, and focusing on what really matters in the profession that we've chosen. I don't know if that answers the question or not, Drell. I just got off
Oh,
on a rant.
I think it. No, I know. I think it definitely answers the question, especially the last little bit you talked about, because I think our professional goals sometimes are motivated by those things that become important to us in the career, like anything encompassing, like your taking care of yourself. If you have a family, all those things become important as you kind of matriculate through your profession. What about you, Kim? How do you balance your professional goals as you've transitioned to a different community?
Well, I think, you know, coming to Coppell, people probably thought, man, you went from a smaller program to a much larger program, which is true. So they would think not burn me out, but I actually feel like I'm here for the longevity, trying to create the longevity of my career, finding a place that fits how I want to be as a family member, how I want to be as a friend, how I want to be as a teacher. All of that kind of goes into the choice that I made to come to Coppell, and am very fortunate for that. So I think from a professional thing, it's, you see so many educators leave the business pretty early. I mean, if we're going to be really
True.
transparent about it, a lot of people are saying, I don't want this grind or whatever it is, or they have other opportunities, or they want to center their focus somewhere else. And I completely respect that. And for me, it's like, no, I want to create the longevity here. I want to stay as long as I possibly can, because I think this is what I'm called to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is where I'm supposed to be to do it. And so navigating that in change actually kind of made it, I want to say, a little bit easier, because I didn't feel like I had to be so rushed I don't feel rushed to get anything done, if that makes sense. Now, of
Yeah.
course, I want us to make great music and I want us to do great things, but I'm in no rush to prove anything or whatever it needs to happen. I just want to be a great mentor for young kids. And so that means I have to be the best version of myself, right? But I think I found a place where I can do that for a very long time. So creating your passion again after 16 years, going, no, I think I got 16 more. Maybe I have 25 more. I don't know how many I have more. But I feel like that's my next step, is how do I make sure I make it that far?
Oh, that's so awesome. So here's my last question, my last bit of advice I'd like for you guys to share with us. Because David, how many years have you been in the profession now?
31 total.
31 for you. And then Kim, how many for you?
This is coming into 17.
This is coming into 17. So uh, give us some advice. Tell us how we can stay in the profession as long as you have. Mr. Aydelott, tell us, enlighten us.
I think it's focusing on what you believe is to be important. And for me, it boils down to creating students who will enjoy their band experience and then in turn become advocates of the arts when they're adults. So that's my ultimate aim, is that they have a good experience in the band program, and whether they go into music or not, that they at least buy fruit from their next door neighbor, or they, their children are in bands someday, so that we create a culture that supports what we've chosen to do in this great subject matter of music. And that's my ultimate aim. So I think going back to what a wonderful subject matter we've chosen to teach, that's where my inspiration comes from. And then secondly, I love people and interacting with people and helping folks grow, and how incredible high school students can be with the right conditions, and then my responsibility in helping those conditions come to fruition. That's what keeps it fresh for me. And then try to ignore, as much of the paperwork. And I'm with Kim on the organized desks are hugely overrated. Einstein's desk was a hot mess. So that's my excuse. And I've had friends and colleagues that I worked with before that gave me a hard time, but I know I'm right. So just keeping what's important, make sure that's important.
That's awesome. Well, I too share in that vision because you guys know my colleague Heather that I work with, who shout out to Heather Palmer. She's one of the best teachers I know. Her desk is clean every single day. And when you look at my desk, you're like, how do you guys even, manage to stay in the same space? So Kim, let me ask you a similar question, but I'd like for you to talk more about, you mentioned in order for you to be the best mentor to the students that you teach, you have to be the best version of yourself. How do we do that? How have you been able to do it?
Not well sometimes. I mean, if I'm being really honest.
In our culture, we say, tell the truth and shame the devil. So thank you for being honest. We
Right.
appreciate that.
I think when I was younger, I thought that I had to, if I wasn't working all the time, I was a director,
Yeah.
and then, you go through life and you live, right? You go through things and you realize that if you're just efficient, right? You're efficient with your time, you can accomplish a lot and not lose yourself in the job. I think that's something important too. And so in terms of making it and how do you do that, is you've got to find a good balance of understanding that you can have goals and aspirations and you can work efficiently towards them, but you don't have to sit there at 10 o'clock at night and go, if I don't finish this, or even 7 o'clock at night, or whatever it is, that's going to make you any less of a human or any less of a band director or any less of an influencer, whatever it is. Because when you can't sit there and teach the kids balance because you don't have balance, and you want to pay forward what you want to see out of everyone else.
Right.
I used to talk to the students a lot about, for our job, students are 100% of our life, right? Because that's what we do. But for them, we're like one of 8 or
Right.
10 or 12. So the
Right.
time that I have them, I want it to be so precious that they realized first that they're loved, that they're in a place that they can, grow as a human. And then we're going to teach, the tool we're going to use is music, right? And
Yeah.
so those are the key components to being able to accomplish anything. I truly believe is that you have to have trust and love with communication, right? And then they've got to have the buy-in that she's with me doing it, right?
Right.
And I'm everything to her and she's everything to me right now. It's those kind of relationships that you build that, later in life, they're going to appreciate. When I see alumni come back, it is the most heartwarming thing you see, because you realize that, okay, maybe I did do something okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't screw up everything,
Yeah.
So you don't have to do everything at once. You just a little bit at a time, be more efficient with your time, and you can do anything.
Well, I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been really awesome. I know I said it at the beginning. You guys are two of my most favorite people in the world, and I'm kind of misty because I love you guys. I think you are fantastic educators. I think the communities that you serve are very blessed to have you, and I know that I'm very blessed to have you in my life. So thank you for sharing with us today, and all of you that have made it all the way through this chat today, we appreciate it. If you're going back out into the hot sun, we are praying for you. If you're about to go into a teacher meeting, we are also praying for you. But we just hope that you have a good day, and if you are in a place of transition, don't be afraid to reach out to people that you know, good mentors, anybody that's willing to help, ask good questions, and have some good rapport with the people that you're around. Probably going to make your transition a lot better. So thank you to my guests, David and Kim. Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I hope to see you guys on the next episode of our Music for All Lunch Chats. Thank you, everybody.
Go hydrate.
Go hydrate. That's
Sunscreen.
right.
Yes.